It's easy to see that the car and transport industry makes a ton of money as people all over the world look for a comfortable and stylish way to get from A to B. In fact, it does not just make a ton of money, but per year the automotive industry actually makes somewhere around the region of $2 trillion. You can't even imagine how to begin spending this kind of crazy cash. It is no surprise, therefore, that lots of different brands and manufacturers want to get in on the action. Some of these brands haven't been able to stand the test of time, though, and today we're going to look into some of the very best cars made by defunct manufacturers and where you might be able to get one. The DeLorean DMC-12. Everyone has heard of the DeLorean. We absolutely couldn't start off this list with any other car, could we? The DeLorean is unmistakable and is for sure one of the most famous cars in the entire world. If you showed a picture of one to pretty much anybody, they would more than likely be able to recognize it. This is because the DeLorean was the star of the incredibly successful movie franchise Back to the Future. Sure, there were people cast in it too, but the real star on screen is the incredible time-traveling car. With its gold-wing doors and unique silhouette, it is immediately recognizable and looks super cool. However, in real life, the DeLorean did not do so well. It certainly couldn't take you traveling across space and time. The DeLorean D12 was actually the only car ever made by the DeLorean company, as it only lasted a few years before it sadly went bust. It was founded in the 1970s by John DeLorean, who spent his life dreaming of building the best American sports car the world had ever seen. It was not meant to be, however, as the DeLorean DMC-12 wasn't very fast at all for a sports car, as its engine was too weak to handle the top speeds people wanted from it. It also had a lot of flaws in the structure, and the cars would often malfunction or break down. To make matters even worse, the DeLorean was very, very expensive. The real-life DeLorean flopped and the company folded, but thanks to the success of Back to the Future, the DeLorean has gone down in history. If you're serious about owning a piece of motoring and movie history, you can buy a real DeLorean. Collectors rarely sell and trade them, but they are out there. Check eBay, as some are listed for sale on there a few at a time. And some classic car merchants also have one come their way every now and then. Oldsmobile 442. Oldsmobile were part of the GM Motors company before their band of business went defunct. It had been in existence since 1897, which is definitely impressive in and of itself. Some of its cars, though, are still iconic to this day. Possibly the most famous and recognizable of these is the Oldsmobile 442, which any car fan could easily pick out of a lineup without any difficulty. Back in the day, the brand was famous for producing smaller, more compact versions of the GM vehicles that were on the roads in America. However, in the late 60s, people started to want their smaller cars to be a bit faster, more aggressive, and generally have the same kind of feel as the bigger, more powerful muscle cars that were on the market. Oldsmobile took this desire to the drawing board and ended up creating the 442. It only has 2 doors and a trunk, so it's not too big, but the creators gave some more power to its engine though. At the time, you couldn't find a smaller car. It was incredibly popular, particularly as the newfound strength of the engine was matched by its muscle car-esque design. The model, which was released in 1970, was the best-selling out of all of them, and it had an impressive 370 horsepower from its V8 engine. Again, this is another one you can find on classic car websites and auctions, although it is notably harder to find if you aren't in the United States. If you're a serious overseas collector, you can probably get your hands on one, but you might have to pay a lot of import and transportation fees to get it. Hummer. The Hummer is a pretty recent offering to the defunct auto brands pile, but a memorable one nonetheless. Distinct, recognizable, and simply huge. The Hummer models are certainly not going to be forgotten to the age anytime soon. Hummer specialized in off-road military-style vehicles similar to their professional-grade Humvee, owned by the larger company GM Motors. Except, unlike the Humvees driven around by members of the Army, these are totally road legal and can be owned by any motorist. Well, almost any. The Hummer models H3 and H2 were so expensive they priced out the average consumer. This, in fact, was one of the downfalls of the sizable Hummer. One of these cars could set you back the price of a home, and the fuel economy wasn't much cheaper. They were famously expensive to run, so really only millionaires could afford to drive them. Because of their brash, tacky, and enormous presence on the road, anyone with both money and class didn't want to be seen driving one. The Hummer section of the company ended up going bankrupt. as beyond being some car enthusiast eye candy, they aren't very practical at all. If you're desperate to drive one of these, they are for sale in various types of condition for between $20,000 and $80,000. But if you want a top-of-the-line one, you're going to be paying a heck of a lot more. Pontiac Firebird. Another famous muscle car is definitely the Pontiac Firebird. To be honest with you, it was hard to choose a Pontiac because they're all pretty awesome. The brand has been around since the 1930s, but really got a kick and flourished in the 60s in particular, when young people began to seek out more powerful vehicles to cruise around town in. The Firebird ticked all the right boxes when it came out in 1967. It became an instant hit and received multiple remodels and versions in the decades following due to its insane popularity. It had a powerful engine, it was affordable, and it looked effortlessly cool. Each version of the Firebird to be released had differences and tweaks from the last, but the design of each one was also special. One of the most recognizable versions of these cars is from 1973, when the Firebird Trans Am had a huge Native American bird decal applied in the factory to the hood of the car. The bird was designed by artist John Chanella, and the design is still famous today. The popular movie Smokey and the Bandit featured one of these Firebirds, and it was hugely successful for the already profitable vehicle company. Things got even better when the 1980s TV series Knight Rider was released, and the iconic Kit, the car, became a household name. Kit, of course, is a futuristically enhanced Pontiac Firebird and made sure that the Firebird went from being historical to legendary. Unfortunately, by the time we reached the 2000s, the Pontiac brand didn't have what the public wanted anymore. A series of pretty unfortunately received cars meant that Pontiac went under, and GM filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Firebirds are definitely still traded and auctioned by collectors, and as the car was extremely popular, there's still a pretty decent amount of them around. They're definitely not as hard to find as some of the other cars on this list, but just as awesome. The Plymouth Barracuda. If you know anything about cars, you have heard of the Barracuda. Everyone knows of the Ford Mustang, but back in the day, it had some serious competition. The Mustang had cornered a section of the market, but other companies wanted to tap into it as well. And for Plymouth, their answer was the Barracuda. It came after their previous success, the Valiant, and had many of the same features, except this was a little more powerful and a little more muscly. It was a two-seater and had all the models are renowned for driving extremely smoothly. Depending on the model you went with, you could either get your hands on a 6-cylinder or 8-cylinder engine, and it would definitely get heads turning as you drove by. Because Plymouth was a subdivision of Chrysler, it meant that the Barracuda could get some pretty sweet features. One of the later models of Barracuda got Chrysler's famously reliable Hemi V8 engine, leading to fans of the car affectionately referring to it as the Hemi Cuda. This powerful V8 engine meant that this model of the Barracuda had 425 horsepower, and it left everything else in the dust. Plymouth has been out of business for a while, despite the Chrysler brand as a whole still going strong. Plymouth hasn't put out anything since 2001, so it's now been 20 years since they went bust, meaning that if you want to get your hands on a Barracuda in decent working order, you might have to shop around a bit. It's definitely possible though, so if you want to make sure to check auctions and keep your fingers crossed. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching as always, and see you next time.